Hello everybody. I am up at my family farm in Wallen today, up at Sampson's Hollow. A lot of you watching have been up here before and seen like the main areas of our farm. Today I'm going to go up and explore some of the lesser known areas of the farm. It's right up this ridge right here. Get the shot of that. Right up this ridge up here. It's a mountain, it's an incline. You want to join me? Come on up. So anyway, this is the access point up this ridge, and it's a really pretty clearing up at the top. It's actually one of the highest, probably the highest points elevation wise at our farm. And it reminds me of a story in the book of Matthew. We see how Jesus told his disciples to go to a mountain, atop of a mountain in Galilee. And the disciples didn't know why Jesus wanted them to go to the mountain or what would happen once they got there. But they trusted Jesus and they did what he said. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Well, I actually had to stop and catch my breath. I am not an avid hiker by any means, but as I was saying, it's an awesome way to get out in the mountains, in the woods, take a hike, and as I said before, we're talking about Jesus telling his disciples to go to a mountain. They may have been out of breath too, I don't know, but we're not going to get into that today. We are going to get into, like I said, Matthew. This is in Matthew 28:17. It says, when they saw him, so they're up on the mountain, Jesus appears, and Matthew 28:17 says, when they saw him, they worshiped him, but some still had their doubts. The disciples had seen Jesus do all those amazing things, but for some of them, it still seemed too good to be true that he could have risen from the dead, and Jesus knew that this was in their hearts. He told them in 18, it goes on, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. You see, Jesus wanted to remind his friends that he is the Son of God. Nothing is impossible for him. But he didn't stop there. He gave the disciples a new mission. Jesus told his disciples to be teachers. He wanted them to tell everyone about him. And here's what Jesus said. So you must go and make disciples of all nations, baptize them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Teach them to obey everything I've commanded you. And you can be sure that I'm always with you to the very end. Whoa, isn't that cool? That's a big job, telling all the nations about Jesus. The disciples were a small group of people. How would they be able to tell the whole world about what Jesus had done? They must have wondered how they could possibly even begin this impossible mission. So Jesus' followers returned to Jerusalem. One day, Jesus led them to a hill outside the city near Bethany. And on that day, Jesus was eating a meal with his disciples, and that might seem a little strange to include that detail in the Bible when we read it, but it shows us that Jesus was really alive. And they weren't dreaming. Jesus was really back from the dead, living, breathing, and even eating like you and me. I'm probably going to get something after I do this story because I'm so winded and tired and hungry. So Jesus tells them that very soon God is going to do something special for them. Jesus promised the disciples that God would give them a gift that would help them accomplish this big mission of telling the whole world about him. This is in Acts 1, verses 4-5. Do not leave Jerusalem, he said. Wait for my gift my Father promised. You have heard me talk about it. John baptized with water, but in a few days you will be baptized with the Holy Spirit. Jesus went on to say this is in verse 8. You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you. Then you will tell people about me in Jerusalem and in all of Judea and Samaria, and you will even tell other people about me from one end of the earth to the other. So after Jesus told the disciples they would soon have the help of the Holy Spirit, something amazing happened. So some of you have heard this before and you may have guessed. You would be right. Jesus went up to heaven. It goes on in verse 9. It says, the apostles watched until a cloud hid him from their sight. Then suddenly 2 men dressed in white clothing stood beside the disciples. The men were angels. The angels asked the disciples while they were just standing there watching the sky. After all, the disciples had a job to do, right? People needed to hear about what Jesus had done, and it was time to get started. And there's one more part of the story for today. I said it earlier, right? Jesus had told the disciples to wait in Jerusalem because soon God would be sending the Holy Spirit to help them. So that's what they did. They waited. Jesus had given his followers what seemed to be an impossible job. He had told them to share his story and his love with every nation across the entire world. The disciples had no idea where to start, but Jesus promised he would send a gift to help them. So they waited in Jerusalem for the Holy Spirit to come. They trusted that God would give them exactly what they needed to begin this impossible mission. And here's the really cool part. Jesus has given us the same mission that he gave the disciples. He wants us to tell others about him. And we are all part of his big story. We're continuing the work that the disciples began all those years ago. And we know that God will help us keep going even when it seems impossible. Many of us face what seems like impossible tasks every single day. And guys, as you grow up, even me, I'm 40 now, every single day, you're going to face something that seems like it's impossible. But you know what? God is already there. He's already on the other side. And if you just trust him to equip you with whatever you do, he will make sure you get through to the other side. Now, speaking of impossible tasks, squirrel? No, that's not a squirrel. Speaking of impossible tasks, I've made my way all the way up here. Again, I said I'm not a hiker. Now I'm realizing I've got to go back down. See you next time, guys.